Are demographics still useful at all is the question. They're marginally useful, like tiny little bit, like 10% accurate. That's about it. And this is after talking to close to 1 million people around the world and in 152 languages across 180 countries with a degree of statistical accuracy that's more than you need for a PhD from Harvard, and finding out what really makes people tick and how they make their decisions and what their values are, but also their wants, their needs, their expectations. We got this enormous data set of what everybody in the world is actually using, what the tools they're using to make decisions about everything in their life, which is their values. And so to answer one part of your question, any demographic label that you care to place on people, age, gender, income, marital status, all that stuff, the people inside any of those cohorts, those buckets, those groups, they're only 10% similar to each other on average across the board. So there's a 10% similarity that you get if you start using demographics to understand people. So let's say Gen Z, they're 10% similar to each other, and men are 10% similar to each other. And Gen Z men who make $150,000 a year, there's another. So it's three groups of people who are 10% similar to each other stacked on top of each other. And you get a bigger group of people who are 10% similar to each other. And we go spend $1 million and it's 90% ineffective. So is it still useful? Of course it is. Demographics, my book for dramatic purposes is called The Death of Demographics, but it's the death of using demographics the way we have been using them. Because the fact is, if I'm selling reading glasses, they're not going to sell to 17-year-olds. And if they're reading glasses made out of platinum that cost $2,000, they're not selling to old guys who are poor. So you still need to use some demographics to put a fence around a group of people and say, here's who I want to talk to. But then where we've been going wrong with demographics is saying, okay, now that I understand I'm talking to rich old guys who need reading glasses, they're all the same as each other. Well, they're not. They're all incredibly different. They're only 10% the same as each other. So we need another layer on top of that demographic definition in order to do our jobs, which is to get some people to say yes to whatever it is we want them to say yes to.
Do you have a theory as to why so many of us default to a more demographic view of the world? Because anywhere that we go, this seems to be the label, whether you're talking about politics, whether you're talking about business, whether you're talking about science. It just always seems that every field goes back to this easy to understand, as you said, age, gender, marital status, and so forth. Is this something instinctive in people, have you found?
It's instinctive and easy. You hit the nail on the head. It's simple. You can look at a group of people and you can see if they're men or women. Most of the time, you can tell. You ask them some questions about, are you rich or poor? Or do you have a BA or an MBA or a high school diploma? And it's easy to track and easy to put people in groups. And we all like easy. And on top of that, it's really the only thing we've had. So it's kind of a default. We can't be, as a company, you can't be all things to all people. So you got to kind of narrow it down somehow. So you start to think about that stuff. And, here's a great example. You say to yourself, well, we're building a new technology, a new kind of app that, it's obviously it's going to be for young people. I was out waiting for my sushi order. I was picking up my sushi last night at the restaurant down the street from where I live in Vancouver. And there was this guy sitting at a table who wasn't picking his up. He was actually sitting there having his sushi. And he had 3 laptop screens open in front of him. He had one iPad on a vertical and 2 laptops. And he was working on all 3 of them while eating his sushi. And he must have been 65 or 70 years old. Here's a guy, like, it's insulting to say he's not going to be interested in a new piece of technology that's coming out. Like, he knows more about, I couldn't do that. I couldn't get 3 of my screens to work in a sushi restaurant in a way that I could work on them all at the same time. I couldn't figure that out. All of my life depended on it.